Hey ladies, so today I have something special for you. We're changing it up. I have been going back, well not me, my amazing team has been going back and asking some of the other podcasts that I've actually been on if we could utilize that interview on Mom is in Control. So throughout the weeks to come, you may hear some interviews that I've done in the past with other people. So let's dive into today's episode. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think. You are listening to the 4-Phase Cycle Podcast with your hosts, Megan and Alex of Zesty Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you have come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, we use the 4 phases of the feminine cycle in combination with functional lab work to transform the lives of the women we work with. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your own doctor before making changes. Ready to take control of your health? Let's get started.
Ladies, do we have the episode for you? We are interviewing Heather Chauvin today, and she is the creator of the Mom is in Control podcast. It's a mostly solo show where she tells it like it is, and you will hear that Heather is a total badass who does tell it like it is. She is bringing her A game to this episode where she describes everything that she is into and how she makes her life work for her, and she absolutely rocks it. She's our new BFF, and she's one of our mastermind sisters that we are getting to know inside our Selena Sue mastermind that Megan and I, this is Alex talking, signed up for. So back to Heather. On her podcast, she reveals her most vulnerable truths about womanhood, which we're all about, parenting her 3 boys, living through stage 4 cancer, navigating marriage, and creating business success without burning out. With new podcasts every day, Heather draws on her experience as a former social worker, mental health advocate, and inspirational speaker, giving women permission to live more, drop the guilt, and ask for what they need. And we love all of it. So Heather has been featured on the Huffington Post, the OWN Network, CTV, Real Simple Magazine, The Jenny McCarthy Show, and has been interviewed by many notable podcasters and radio shows. Her motto is, in order to raise happy, calm, and confident children, we must become the person we most desire them to be. And with that, we are going to start the episode for you. And please, please, please let us know what you think. Take a screenshot of the episode. Share with us and Heather. You can tag her on social media. It's instagram.com/momisincontrol. And then that is how you can tag her. And please share your takeaways with us. What were your aha moments? What did you learn from it? What stood out most to you? Let us know so that we can learn with you. All right, ladies, without further ado, let's hit it.
Hi, Heather. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, ladies.
We just finished recording on Heather's podcast, and it was a fabulous conversation. So her podcast is Mom is in Control. And I'm curious, Heather, can you tell us a little bit about how did you end up with this podcast? And I know you're a mental health advocate and inspirational speaker. So how did you end up in this field of work?
Yeah. So I always giggle because actually, if you go to Moms in Control, that's like a very inappropriate site. And I get emails about that all the time. So it's Mom is in Control. And I always tell people to say that because they're like, Heather, did you know? And I was like, yes, I know. Not good marketing. So that said, a little nutshell version of who I am. I'm a mother of 3. They're 14, 9, and 6, 3 boys. My background is in social work. And like you ladies, I just felt alone in the world. Like seeking support and help, not understanding my children, not understanding their behavior. And I thought, I have a degree and access to apparently the best local resources. Why do I still feel like I'm failing as a mother? And so I didn't understand at this time. I only had one. He was 4 years old. I didn't understand why he was so angry and anxious all the time. And I would come home and I would scream and yell, and I didn't know how to discipline, quote unquote, discipline. And I just found myself crying myself to sleep at night. So that's when I found meditation and mindfulness and really diving into coping strategies, like finding these amazing coping strategies for self-regulation. And then I remember telling myself, because at this time I was working as a social worker, like, there's no way that I can do this work for another 30 years and feel like I'm constantly putting Band-Aids on the problem. So I jumped outside of that, started teaching online. And while I'm doing this, I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing, right? What do they tell you? Hustle, go, go, go. Sleep is for sissies. And I'm like, well, I'm going to win this game, right? Like, here I am breastfeeding my son, my youngest. He was a year old at the time. And my abdomen started swelling. I was bloated, not paying attention to myself, never having enough time. And I'm using air quotes, never having enough time to go to the doctor, because I was like, oh God, I don't want to do that. So ended up in Emerge on December 23rd, 2013. So almost 6 years ago. And at that time, through a CT and blood work on the spot in Emerge, told me that I had cancer. And it was a huge, this is literally a nutshell version, but it was a huge wake up call that I neglected my needs so bad. And when I say neglected, this wasn't just out of thin air. At the time, I was 27 years old, okay, married, 3 children. But when I look in hindsight, the flags were there for years, probably in my teens as well. Years and years and years, my parents doing the best that they possibly could for me, but, taking me to the doctor, being like, what's wrong with her? And, whether it was mentally or physically, and it was like, she was fine. So I just coasted until all of these little building blocks just built on top of each other. And the neglect that I put on my physical body, my mental body, I could take action though, guys. I could take action and hustle. I could just squeeze, coffee and anxiety. Oh my gosh, through the roof. But it's getting shit done, and that's all that matters. And it looks good on Instagram. So did it, stage 4 cancer, Burkitt's lymphoma, abdomen swollen. By the time I got diagnosed to the time I was good, I went through conventional medicine, had a very integrative approach, and it was ridiculous. I lost my eyesight. I was so sick. They didn't know if I was going to make it. And I radically shifted every aspect of my life. The energy I surrounded myself with, how I talked to myself, how I treated my children, how I had to go and throw out like every book I've ever read, because I'm like, this is BS. This doesn't even make sense. And I had to rewrite my own rules. And that's kind of how Mom is in Control came about, because so many women were saying to me, Heather, I want to feel in control of my life. And they didn't know how to get there. And so I was kind of guiding them. But yet you're going to have to do some uncomfortable things that you're not going to want to do. And so that's how I got to where I am today.
Oh, wow. So thank you for sharing that. I can only imagine going through having stage 4 cancer and having children and just having that completely change your world. And I know, Heather, you have a TED Talk, which is amazing. So everybody should go watch that, but it's called Dying to Be a Good Mother. And in that you said something about balance doesn't exist. And I love that you said that.
That's the R-rated. What's the PG-rated version? Balance. So it's like, balance is BS.
Yes. So can you just talk a little bit more about that and what you mean by that not existing? And I know I have 2 small children and a business, so I totally agree. But I think that this is a topic we'd love to dig into more with our ladies.
Yeah, so I'm all about alignment. And alignment to me is it has to feel good, which that statement right there is kind of very counterintuitive to how we've been raised as women. Um, I didn't realize until I actually remember when I started investing in myself, and one of the first coaches I had at the end of our time together, I said, if I knew the value I was going to get from this experience, I would have remortgaged my home, because she was the one who pushed me and advocated for me to really own who I wanted to be. And part of that experience, which I didn't know I was getting myself into, was this concept of pleasure. And I thought pleasure equaled sex, but pleasure was like things need to feel good in your life. And I remember sitting in my backyard reading a random book. And she's like, just read a book, just do something. She's like, and I was sitting there and I was so incredibly uncomfortable, like uncomfortable that I was trying to do something that made me feel good. But I realized that that was this buildup of all of like, it's like the detox, right? Like everything, it gets worse before it gets better. I was so uncomfortable with experiencing joy and ease and contentment in my life that I had to sit with my discomfort first. And so every time, people are like, oh, just pick something that's easy. Like, your life purpose is you're supposed to experience joy. It was like this whole journey that I had to go on to find alignment. And so, what do I want? I don't know what I wanted. I had no idea, because my whole life was, what does everyone else want? Or who does everybody else want me to be? And so it was like this unlearning. And so now when I'm working with women, I'm asking them all the time, like, what do you want? And they're like, I have no idea. I want to spend more time with my children. I want this. And it's like, you're a liar. Part of what you want is attached to somebody else. It's not even for you. I'm like, right now in this moment, what do you want when you really think about it? And it could be, I want to go for a walk in the sun. I want a glass of water. I want to take a bath. I want to get a massage. Your body knows these things. And so I started writing, I guess, I don't know if you call them desire lists or what, but I would write, I want, I crave, I desire. And so sometimes I put pen to paper and I'd be like, I want. And it would be something simple as that: a shower, a healthy meal, a glass of water. And here's the crazy thing. Then I started acting on those lists, right? So I would fulfill myself with the water, with the shower. And then I would go, okay, what's next? What's next? And so my desires and goals got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So this concept of balance, when I say it's balance, is BS, because I truly believe it's constructed in this perfectionism which society has of like, oh God, I'm almost there, I'm not there. Oh, I've spent, 1 point, I have two, what do they say, like 2.5 children, and like, all this whatever. Well, I spent time with this child one-on-one. Now I've spent time with this child. Oh, yeah, my husband, he got his date night this week. We've had sex 3.25 times, and I've made all the meals and da-da-da. It's like, what do you want? So for me, alignment comes from me and then radiates outside of me. And when I got my diagnosis and I really had to get quiet with myself and go, okay, how do I want to feel and kind of bring myself back to life? I realized other things didn't bother me anymore. So I wasn't so obsessed with the dishes in the sink or how much dog hair was on the floor. It was about how I wanted to feel. And that's how I defined alignment, or AKA balance. It comes from that place, from the inner state, rather than what my life looks like on the outside.
Oh, that's so perfect. I love that. And it's so interesting how that gets passed down, isn't it? I had as you're talking, I'm having like a very similar feeling, because I think when I got diagnosed with early ovarian or premature ovarian failure, I was like going along trying to click all the check marks for like what I should do with my life. So far I'd been like, go to school, check, marry a nice man, check, like get a cute apartment, check. Like I was going along doing all the right stuff. And then, I got stuck on the kid part, and all of a sudden it was like, I couldn't click that check mark off. And it felt like my whole world sort of fell apart. And I think it's because I had watched my mom, and my mom, like, she's a superwoman, like
speaks multiple languages, like reads, writes, like does poetry, composes music. Like she's amazing, has 3 PhDs. But like I watched her sleep for like 3 hours a night for as long as I can remember, cook 3 meals a day. And like I just felt like I was failing so hard to replicate the example that she was setting for me, because I could see that she was trying really hard, and effort to me seemed like that's what I was getting graded on, right? So then it was like I wanted to emulate that because I could just see how hard she was trying. And then just to be in that space where you're like, I literally can't move forward with this, so I have to sit here and be like, what I actually want. And I remember having that moment where I was like, I have no idea what I want. I've only been doing what I thought I was supposed to be going down with the check mark. And for me, my like gateway drug into all this stuff actually was energy work. So I went to an energy healer, and then she kind of introduced me to the whole concept of self-love, meditation, automatic writing, kind of all that stuff. And then that really, but I think it's such a journey to go from thinking in this conventional way to then really integrating like into an alignment or a spirit-led way of living. So what was your kind of like gateway drug? What got you into this lifestyle? And then how has that evolved for you? Like how has your life changed around this whole concept now from when you started?
Yeah. So my gateway was definitely trying to help my son. And that's how I found meditation. And I actually created, it's not available on my site anymore, but my first product that I created was called Teach Your Kid to Meditate. And it attracted a whole bunch of parents who are like, you need to meditate. Like all these angry, anxious parents not living in the moment who are like, my kid needs to meditate. They're out of control. And that was my first aha moment that in order to teach my children anything, I first need to know, right? Like we can teach what we need to learn, but I need to be able to practice it as well. So it was an aha moment to me. I'm like, oh, I need meditation. Oh, I need to calm down. Oh, he's triggering my fear because I don't know how to manage my own anxiety. So when he is anxious or angry and I feel out of control with my anxiety and my anger, my temper, guess what? Like how I'm just going to be reactive. I'm not going to go, oh, buddy, like, guess what? Let's just take a few deep breaths, or like, oh, you're in your red zone. Okay, I'll walk away and then I'll re-enter. So I was learning so much through my children, and a lot of the women that I attract, parenting is a big trigger for them. And it's not so much that they feel out of control in parenting, but too often, when you jump into this, you realize, oh gosh, like I'm bringing all my stuff with me. And we are human beings, and it doesn't matter how hard you try, how much you invest in yourself, how much work you do, there's going to be people or situations that enter your life where you're triggered. And I wanted to point this out too, because one of you has children and one of you doesn't, right? And so we are all mothers, all of us, all women. We're mothering, we're nurturers. And what I have found is that so much of our identity is attached to this. Like who I am was dictated about my child's success. And so what happens if you don't have children? Does that mean you're a failure as a woman? And so this is so much, and I've attracted women too who don't have children or can't, and they're grieving the loss of this. And it's like, who are we beyond our roles? Like, who am I if I'm not a business owner? Who am I if I'm not a superwoman? Who am I if I'm not a mother? If I'm not a wife? Like, who am I? Can we bleep on this podcast? I throw F-bombs all the time. I will be good. But yeah, seriously,
we can put the little E for some.
Okay, I cut that one out. So
we try to keep it on the. But
I'll keep it clean, just like my plate. So, but the point is, who are you beyond your roles? And I think that's at the core of this, that your life starts to show you these quote unquote symptoms, whether it's a hormone imbalance, whether it's a diagnosis. And I always say, like, you don't have to wait for diagnosis or some, oh, I gotta, the doctors don't know what's wrong with me. Okay. Like, be proactive. Do your research. Why are you waiting for something to happen in order for you to now start to do something about it? So life's constantly giving you misalignment, right? It's constantly showing you what you need to work on. And so why are we just waiting for that to happen? So when I strip back everything, and I am not perfect at this by any means, and we have a lot of conditioning as women of who we need to be and how we need to serve. So when I start stripping this back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, who am I? Sometimes I don't even know, right? Like, we still need to figure that out. There's a lot of pen to paper to figure that out. I could go on and on forever.
Heather, you're bringing up a lot of things in me, because I feel like for me with 2 children, one being 8, when she's doing certain things or certain behaviors, I will notice how triggered I am, and they're much more extreme than the actual behavior. And it took me a long time to figure out that I'm triggered by my older daughter's anxiety, because I have this extreme guilt of, the first 5 years of her life, or, the beginning of her life, not being in the place that I'm in now and not having the tools I have now. And I really feel like I've programmed her to be this little addictive, anxious human being. And I have so much guilt around it that I'm watching her and I'm just like, oh, just stop doing that, because then it's just a reminder to me of where I was. And then I have my second child, who's only 3, and she's experienced much more of the calm, holistic, meditating Megan. And I just feel a little bit guilty that my older child didn't get that. But honestly, I got there because of my older child. So she really taught me the lessons. But how do you help people kind of separate from that? And, I'm like, okay, I'm doing everything. I'm walking my walk now. But there's also programming, and there's things that she's picked up on, and she's her own person. So how do you kind of help a mom not get into that daily guilt mode?
Yeah, so this is a great question. And I just want to come to it from the place of I've been there and I'm there. And so part of helping someone through something is saying, this is what's worked for me, but what feels good to you? And like we were talking about when we were kind of doing the swap, and I was interviewing you were saying, I want our clients to feel empowered. And it's so, so important that you feel good about what you're doing and how you're living your life. So this is my perspective on guilt. So everyone's like, you give birth to guilt. And I get so triggered by the memes I see about guilt, but to me, it just shows that you care about your children and that you love them. So I had tremendous guilt after I got sick. I'm like, I've screwed up my kids, screwed them up, right? Especially my oldest, he was 9 at the time. And even now, if I have a cold or I'm not feeling good or I'm taking a nap, he's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. Like, he's ruined forever. He's going to be anxious and all of this. But on the flip side of that, I also look at how compassionate he is, how empathetic he is. We have a deeper relationship because of it, but also like the gratitude, like he knows how precious life is. And I had to subscribe to this belief and thought. And so, I mean, we can take this conversation way further, into beliefs and faith and all of that. But I had to subscribe to like something bigger is at play. And this was meant to be. And so not that everything's meant to be, but I didn't have control over that. And so I didn't know what I knew, like what I know now. And so I believed and I subscribed to this story that this my oldest, came to me when I was all screwed up to awaken me, and that it is part of his spiritual script and his soul purpose to experience that. And so we think, there are guinea pigs and we're screwing them up and we're doing whatever. But I'm like, no, who would I be without him? I would probably still be the old yucky version of myself. And I'm not that person. And so I think we also discount the work that we've done, right? Like if 10 years from now, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you used to do that. And you thought you were a great version of yourself then. So, and one more thing, of course, nobody ever calls me when I'm doing these things, but of course they call later. One other thing that I was going to say is I see guilt. It's like a mask of fear. It comes from a place of lack and scarcity. So if I'm not afraid of something, because once you get into this personal development, you understand like there's lack and abundance, right? So when you're in a state of lack, you're like, okay, I got to shift that thought. I believe as women, there's like this special little like thing that comes out, and all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, she has bought onto me. Like she's caught on to me. She knows that there's lack and abundance. So now I'm going to put on this mask and we're going to call it guilt. So I still see guilt as a state of lack. And so shifting that mindset constantly to how can I be grateful in this moment that I have screwed up my children a little bit? I also believe we're all going to be in therapy, even if, you're perfect for everything. Your children are going to have something to complain about that has absolutely nothing to do with you. And so you've just sprinkled them with a little extra goodness that's going to help them in their adult life as well. But I think it's more important to focus on how we've improved rather than all the mistakes that we've made.
Thank you. That's really helpful, because that just reframing that takes it away from me. It takes away from me and what I've done. And there's just nothing I can control about how life has come so far and how her birth went and all these things that I somehow feel I should have been able to control, but really I can't. So now, yeah. And in any hand, she has basically helped me be the person, she has led me more than I lead her. That's for sure. So, just recently you had a podcast that was talking about stress. And I just think that what children and children's health is a lot of the women we work with, right, have hormone problems or they're in a stress state. And a lot of the times their stresses are about their children. And we talk a lot about how perceived stress is one of the main reasons of adrenal dysfunction and hormone imbalances. So the cool thing about that is that you can actually change how you perceive it. So you can't change what's happening, but you can change your perception. So you just recently had a podcast that said, are you really stressed out, or are you just having stressful thoughts? And I love that concept. I mean, whether it doesn't even have to be around children, but right, about your health or about your work or your business or your money. Can you talk about that a little bit? I just really love that concept.
Yeah. Okay. So this I love. It was a game changer for me. So Byron Katie. Do you ladies know who Byron Katie is? Okay. So
Yes.
The Work. So for those of you listening, go to thework.com. Byron Katie. They call her Katie, and she's a magical human being. She asks you 4 questions, but really at the essence of it, is it true? And who would you be without that thought? So our thoughts are constantly creating stories, and you're not immune to this. It doesn't matter how much you practice it, you're still going to catch yourself in it. Even today, I'm like, interesting. Wow. And I will tell my husband at night, I'm like, did you know I was mad at you today? And he's like, at what? And I was like, you did this, and then this happened. And then I told myself this story. And then he's like, wow, you must be exhausted mentally. Like you went from belief to story to fixing it and solving it in your brain to loving me again. Like it was just hilarious. But I noticed that the more work I do on myself, meaning my thoughts, understanding that all of our stress manifests from a belief or a thought, and we're telling ourselves this story, and then it's the reality. So let me give you an example. We were camping this past weekend, and this is a perfect example of how you can measure when you are growing as a parent or a person. So my son, my oldest son, he's 14, and he was riding his bike in the campground. And then all of a sudden he was riding with a friend, and the friend's parent was like, hey, did you say that Logan and his friend could go to McDonald's, which was outside of the campground? We're not going to get on the McDonald's bandwagon and talk about the food. He wanted to use the Wi-Fi. So I said, no, he didn't. So he kind of like lied about going and didn't say anything. And so and this was in the pitch black in the middle of the night as well. And so this is not typical of my son, but it's also not, I would really lose my mind if maybe I found out he was like smoking crack in the back or something. Like, he's not a bad kid. Okay. So like going on his bike around the corner. But my biggest concern is you're wearing a black sweater. You are driving on the side of the road. Like, you're going to get hit by a car. But your thought goes into this stressful story, and then you're just going to manifest the rage. Right. So I'm as calm as a cucumber, and my husband is losing his mind. Like, he's just so afraid, and he's going to fight or flight. So my friends are like, oh my gosh, what are you going to do to him? Like, they want to know what Heather Chauvin is going to do to her son for this consequence. And I'm like, I'm actually not going to do much tonight because we're both going to be in our red zones. He is already ashamed of his behavior. I know this. He's a good kid. And so I'm going to talk to him and go, what happened? Why did you go? Why was there a miscommunication? And then tomorrow we'll have this conversation. So he gets back, and my husband's like, you got to go talk to him. So I talk to him. I'm as calm as a cucumber. My son is in his red zone. He's terrified that I am going to freak out. I didn't freak out. And then the next day I was like, okay, like, that was just not cool. And I know you're lying to me, but like, I don't tolerate that stuff. So here's your consequence. And the consequence was like, he lost his phone for the week. And I didn't raise my voice once. Did I lose sleep over it? No, I didn't lose sleep over it. But here's the thing. I can still get my children to listen to me and respect me because I listen to them and I respect them. And so I had to go through this mental process, this whole stress-related process. And this is like one little blip into my life. I'm not talking about, families who have like children with like severe health concerns and like they're afraid. What are our deepest fears? Afraid of death, afraid of whatever. We have to realize emotional intelligence is a real thing. Is my child dead? Like, in my brain, I'm like, my son is going to get hit by a car and die. Okay. Is he dead? No, it didn't happen. It has not manifested yet, but my body is already reacting like it has. So mentally I can catch it and go, Heather, come back. What has happened? He's just left. Okay, maybe I can feel my heart pacing a little bit. Calm down. You're fine. So I've had to coach myself and mother. Okay, this is really important. I've had to mother myself back to this moment, like, healthy mothering, back to this moment over and over and over and over again, because I used to be so triggered and I would have no, like, what I call yellow zone. It was just fight or flight immediately. Like, what did you say to me? Where now I'm not so triggered by that, but I took every opportunity for a trigger to realize it was a wound that I needed to heal within myself. And so when I stopped blaming my children for all of my stress, and I started taking ownership for those thoughts and those stories and doing the work, I realized I was manifesting all the stress inside of me and then projecting it outward onto my child, which is then going to make them more stressful and make them anxious and afraid of me. And so when I did the inner work, then like it was a beautiful cycle on the outside, but I had to keep telling myself or asking myself over and over again, is it true? Is it true? Is it true? And 9 out of 10 times, the answer was no, it's not true. So now I don't believe my thoughts so much when they come up.
This is the same thing that happens with health as well that I've watched. So it's kind of like nothing has actually happened, but maybe now you have a diagnosis or, something has changed in your discovery process, but really you're the same person as you were the day before when you weren't stressed out. But now that there's a label to it or something, it just sends you down like the stressful, right? The stressful thought. I dealt with this. We had mold in our home, Heather, and the stress of potential mold, or the stress of it, I think was probably harder on me than the actual mold itself, because it's just this, it's the fear of not quite knowing what to do, or it's so, I think in general, if someone could predict the future for us and say, hey, these weird symptoms you're having they're just going to happen every month, no matter what, most of us, I know I'd be like, okay, I can handle that. But when you have these weird symptoms and then you're like, well, what's my body trying to tell me? That should be a sign I should be doing something. That's like the stressful thought is more the stressor than the actual potential health concern.
Yeah. And what's your first thought that comes to mind when you get diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer? Like, I'm like, oh crap, there's no stage 5. Like, I'm screwed. And you're going to die. And everyone treats you like that. Like, you're going to die. You're going to die. So when you have this stressful thought, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I was having this thought over and over and over again. And then my body started to catch on, and it was like, oh, okay, you think you're going to die. So like, we're going to put you in fight or flight, like from head to toe. And I remember listening to, are you guys familiar with Abraham Hicks? Okay. Absolutely. So I was listening to, like, get into the vortex, and it's like, your body is the physical well-being. Your body knows exactly how to heal itself. I was listening to that on repeat in my headphones over and over and over and over again to try to calm my body down. I didn't know a lot about EFT then. I would have been tapping all day. But the one thing I remember, I had this moment on the bathroom floor. Apparently magic happens in the bathroom all the time. On the bathroom floor, hovered in fetal position, stressful thought, head to toe, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. And I stopped. And for the first time ever, I was like, you're not dead yet. Like, you're not dead right now. So stop acting like that. I'm like, well, how do I want to feel in this moment? I want to feel alive. Cool. What do you, Heather Chauvin, need to do right now in this moment at 2:00 in the morning, while everyone else is sleeping and you are paralyzed in fear? What do you need to do to feel alive? And so that day, I believe I took a shower at 2:00 in the morning, got myself up, and I was like, I'm going to put on some inspirational music, or I'm going to watch an inspirational YouTube video, because that's what apparently everyone does at 2:00 in the morning. And I just kept asking myself this over and over and over again. How do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? And so if I have this stressful thought that I'm going to die, clearly my energy is going to match that thought. But I refused to live like that, or allow my children to see me like that. And I thought, even if I'm going to die, why can't they just remember me the last month or 6 months of my life, feeling fully alive? And so I had to recondition my thoughts to think positive. And even if I didn't believe the thought, I had to just take the action anyways.
That is so good. I mean, there's just so many applications of this across, parenting, I think, is one, because our kids or other people's kids seem to mirror themselves to what's going on internally. But I feel like my world mirrors my internal stuff just as much. They're just different players in the same game. And then that you were talking about Byron Katie, and I've been listening to Brooke Castillo for the Life Coach School, and her questions, in addition to is it true, is, how do I feel, and what was the thought that led me to feel that? And just asking those questions is it's a funny line to walk, where that empowerment piece, where you believe in your own internal guidance, but you don't believe every single thought or belief you have. So it's an interesting thing where you're uncovering and redefining which ones you actually want to internalize and which ones you don't. But you find that confidence by going through the process, because that's the only way you can figure out if those actually came from you, or if someone else wanted that for you.
I get that question all the time. They're like, how to know when it's intuition or fear? Like, what do I know the difference? And I'm like, you literally have to test it out. Like, ooh, how did that feel when you took action? Is it now out of obligation? Are you lit up about it? And so that's the whole point of internal guidance is test it, be curious, be open, and then get that feedback and then keep going.
So true. So true. And then that puts us, I feel like I used to have the belief that self-confidence and self-love was something that you had to get and then you would act. But it's just been so interesting to realize that it's like I've been proving my own self-confidence to myself. And the more I show up for myself, the more I'm like, I can trust me to take care of me when I didn't used to. I mean, I would just steamroll my feelings just to make someone else happy. I mean, it was not a question whether not only was I going to do what they wanted to do, but I would also berate myself for having the thoughts that I was having, right? Like, why couldn't I just agree with them? So it's a really powerful way to like recalibrate your thinking so that we're not just walking around beating ourselves up all the time.
It's really uncomfortable to choose yourself over and over and over again. And I mean, I've definitely gone like different layers and levels of this. And a current one is, this summer I said, I'm going to create the space to just be. Like, I travel a lot and more than my body can keep up with. So sometimes I am learning how to slow down to speed up. And July and August, I'm like, I am just going to just be. And so I'm watching people having requests of me, like, let's have a pool party. Like, let's do this. Let's do that. Hey, do you want to put on this party? Do you want to do this? Do you want to come here? And I'm like, no, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. And I'm watching the thoughts come up of like, but this is an expectation. Like, you haven't seen this person. You haven't done this. And I'm like, if I can't say no to this person and they're going to like disown me because I've chosen not to spend any energy on them right now because I'm choosing myself, is that person an authentic friend or family? Like, do they deserve to be in my inner circle? And it's not, space from other people or saying no to situations is not a bad thing. You're actually reevaluating the connection. And this goes back to every aspect of our lives. We can still feel connected to other people and things by creating space for ourselves. But that is a vulnerable place to be in, like that moment when you're like, no, it's not going to happen. And then the thoughts come up. You literally have to sit with the thought, that stressful thought of like, they're not going to like me. They're going to hate me. Oh my gosh, this is going to fall apart. Da, da, da. You have to sit with it and not act from that place and then go, oh, fine, I'll just throw the party. No, sit with that thought and just be.
Yeah, definitely. I think once I realized that I am so much meaner to myself than anyone else would ever be, that I was like, okay, I got to get this bully out of here. Like, there's literally no one in my life that I would let behave that way. So I have no idea why I was letting my own brain do that. But it's not until you actually start watching it that you're like, I see what's happening here. This is no bueno. Yeah, well, this has been amazing. Can you tell our listeners where they can find more about you? I know you have your own podcast and you have a book.
Not yet, no book yet, but it's coming. It's coming. But yeah, the Mom is in Control. Mom is in Control podcast. You can listen to that anywhere on iTunes, Spotify. I'm hanging out more on Instagram as well, but you can just my main website, heatherchauvin.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and hanging out with us. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Heather.